Hello, my friends. Welcome to the very first edition of Zoom In. It's my brand new program that allows me to interview people that have inspired me over the years and then share the conversations with you. My name is Craig Tornquist, and when I was thinking about who my first guest would be, there was an obvious name at the top of my list, and that is a gentleman who has been my teacher, my mentor, and I'm also proud to call him my friend, Lee Lonzo, the current director of Champions Together. Hello, Lee.
Hello, Craig. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, this is perfect for me. I am so glad that you agreed to do this. Lee, we're doing this on April 21st, 2020, right in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. How many weeks have you been in your home?
Oh, I've lost track, but it was in early March. We were one of the trendsetters. We decided to go under, but I'm both of a certain age and with an underlying medical condition that make me vulnerable. So we made the decision, as hard as it's been, to not only quarantine ourselves, but isolate ourselves. We haven't been in contact with family, friends. We talk through windows and storm doors, but that's about it. So about
Well,
7 weeks,
I
I
know
think.
you, and I think prior to this, I don't know that you've ever been home for 2 days in a row.
No, it's been a transition, another one of my transitions, but yeah, it's taken some getting used to.
Well, and that's the word, transitions. That is the reason that I wanted to talk to you first, because there are a whole lot of people, myself included right now, who've got a lot of butterflies about what lies ahead and what's this world going to look like, and is there an end to this? And of course there is. You know, I mean, all of these things pass, but when you're in the middle of it, sometimes it's hard to stay hopeful and see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so I wanted to talk to you about some different transitions, because there's no one that I know personally who has done a better job of writing new chapters to their story than have you over the years. And I want to go back to when I first met you. I was a
Okay.
student at Carmel High School in the early 1980s, and you were one of the most popular teachers at Carmel High School at the time. When did you get hired at Carmel? When did you start there?
I started in the fall of 1973, straight out of college, my first job.
And you taught governments?
Well, I had what they call a comprehensive social studies license. So that means I could teach anything within the social studies department. And that's the reason I got the job, is because the first year, Jim Garrettson, my department head, needed somebody who could teach one section of every class.
Oh,
That was a delightful thing for a
good for
first year
you.
teacher, let me tell you. I was trying to stay 3 pages ahead of all my students in seven different textbooks, but that's why I got hired.
Did you have a favorite of those classes that you gravitated toward?
Yeah, very definitely. Initially, it was government, and then sociology. Well, political science was my primary major in college. U.S. history and sociology were my top three. So that's where I started off. And then, as you know, I went back and got my law degree at night, and I developed a course on law, which was really my favorite. So the last numerous years I was in the classroom, that's all I taught, because it was a pretty popular class.
Well, I never had you in the classroom as a teacher, but I remember, I think you were earning your law degree when I was a student there. What year did you pass the bar?
Got to stop and think about this. 1981
Okay, so it was
is
right
when
before. Okay, I was there from
that's
82 to 85, so you
yeah.
had
Well,
just
I
earned it.
just passed the bar then.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that I remember, our paths crossed a lot because you were involved with student government
Right.
and all the pep assemblies you used to sing at. And you were just one of those guys that was everywhere. Another memory I have is that each year we used to vote on who our favorite teacher in the school building was. And my sophomore, junior, and senior year, you won that election all three times, which was
Well, that
very cool.
it was an honor. Um, You don't do things as a popularity contest when you're a teacher. Sometimes you got to make some tough decisions, but um, that was kind of a fun competition because they ran it for about 12 years, and then Dale Graham got rid of it because same three teachers had won it every year. So between Bartos, Dan Bates, and I, we kind of collected all that hardware.
Wow. I know Bartos and Bates. I can't believe they ever beat you. That's that's hard to
They
believe.
did. They did.
All right. So you mentioned Dale Graham. He was the legendary principal of Carmel High School, and I know one of your mentors. Why was he so successful as a leader in your mind?
Well, there's a lot of things that make up leadership qualities, but I think it begins with passion and honesty. And you got both of those from Dale. He was passionate about he was passionate about everything he chose to do. He was passionate about his family. He was passionate about his faith. He was passionate about singing. When he did something, he did it with a passion. His wife, dear Irma, who
Yeah.
recently passed, but dear Irma used to say, "My husband's got a mistress, and her name is Carmel High School." And that's kind of the way Dale approached things. He loved Carmel High School.
Um, what was his message to you about risk taking? Because I thought I heard you talk about that before, where you were allowed to take risks,
Mm-hmm.
and he was going to support you.
Right.
But say that better than I just did. What was his
Well,
philosophy or policy toward
I,
that?
I think his philosophy was that you have to give people, if people are going to improve, they have to have the feeling that you're going to back them if you take risks. Now, he didn't want you to take dumb risk or stupid risk. Most of us would talk about what a great guy Dale Graham was. But if you ever got called in his office and he shut the door behind you, it was about to be a really unpleasant circumstance.
Now,
And
did you hear this, or had you had this experience before?
I've had that experience, and one of them has to do exactly with what you're talking about. I was a pretty young sponsor of the student government. We were in charge of homecoming. And Dave Bartos and I, we used to brainstorm, how can we make it more fun? And so we decided that we were going to make this parade a big deal. We used to start at Carmel Junior High and march down the middle of Main Street, past all the elementary kids at Collegewood and Carmel Elementary, the band. Well, one year I invited a police horse patrol. And we thought that'd be really cool. So
Sounds good.
yeah, invited him. And one of those horses, trained, been through it 1,000 times, got stung by a bee and charged through the elementary kids and stomped a little girl and sent her to the hospital. So Dale called me in on Monday morning, shut the door behind me. And I said, "What the hell were you thinking getting horses in there?" I said, "Dale, I went through the whole thing about all these parades. I had already talked to the group organizer, and this is such a freak. It's never happened before. And obviously the school's going to be terribly liable." And Dale said, "You did all the right things. We're not going to do it again,
Yeah.
but yeah, you did all the right things. I can't blame you for what you did."
So you took an educated risk, and it just didn't. It
And
didn't.
that one ended up with somebody getting hurt really bad.
Yeah.
Now, she recovered eventually, but it was a long recovery. And obviously we felt awful, but I did learn a lesson that, maybe I stretched it a little too far there, but I knew I could do things in the classroom that were totally unique, and I did. And sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't. And I was so confident I was going to, a first year teacher, second year teacher, I would invite Dale up and say, "I'm going to try something new. Come up and watch me." He'd say, "New? And you want me to watch?" I said, "Yeah, it may fall flat on its face, but I want your opinion." So that's the kind of guy he was.
What other positions? Because you were a teacher for a while, but I know that you
Yeah.
wore other hats at Carmel. What other
Well,
hats did you wear?
well, you talk about transitions, and every one of these was kind of a major transition. But the first one was a transition I decided not to make, and that's when I got my law degree. And I think everybody on the universe thought, as soon as he gets that law degree, he's gone. He's going after the money. And I certainly enjoyed the study of law, and it was challenging, but I love Carmel High School too. And I never left. So I chose not to do that one, but I had already gotten my administrator's license. And both my high school principal and Dale Graham had become huge mentors to me and people I admired. I decided I wanted to be a high school principal. So
Right.
my first move was to go down to Dale, and when there was a vacancy in the dean's office, and said, Dale, I've got the license, and I'm really interested. And he said, what's your long-term goal? And I said, well, I want to be a principal. He said, don't apply for this job. And I said, why not? And he said, you'd be down there all day long dealing with discipline issues. And he said, Lonzo, I know you. You would hate this. There will be another opportunity somewhere along the line where you can shine in a job, but it's not going to be dean, so don't apply for it. So I waited around a while, and I had all sorts of opportunities at other schools, but I wanted to stay at Carmel, and the one that came up was athletic director. So I became athletic director.
And now, I know you were a state champion coach for tennis. Was this prior to the athletic director?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you had an athletic background of sorts. I mean, you had dealt with athletics.
I had been in the classroom for 18 years, 17 of which I was the head tennis coach.
Okay.
And although some athletic directors try it at a school the size of Carmel, you can't be an athletic director and a coach at the same time. So that's when I gave up coaching and became the full-time athletic director.
And how long did you serve in that role?
5 years. I told him going in, which I thought would probably hurt me, this is not the job I want for the rest of my life. And some of the other people, it was their dream job. But not for me. I told him flat out, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to change some things. Here's what I'd like to do. And I had a plan of what I'd like to do. But I said, I'm on a path to become a principal someday. So if you want somebody who's going to retire in this position, then you're probably not looking for me.
So is that when you went from there to becoming assistant principal? Was that the next stop?
Yeah, there were two things that happened. I found out the AD's job was just a killer job, hardest job I've ever had. We had over 800 athletes, over 800 contests, and no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't please everybody because there's just so many events. So I'd done it for 5 years, and I went to Bill Duke, who was principal at the time. He was the one that hired me as athletic director. I said, Bill, I'm tired of being tired. I was working I kept track of my hours. I was putting in 60, 70-hour weeks, and I just couldn't
but
do
you
it
get all
anymore.
those thank you notes from the parents to make it all worthwhile.
Exactly. So I said, I love teaching. I'm ready to go back to the classroom. He said, no, you hang on for a little while. And he knew, but I didn't, that Eric Clark was going to retire.
Oh, okay.
And Eric Clark retired, and he just moved me right across the hallway and into Eric's job.
So, did you have a favorite of the jobs? I mean, if you could go back for a week, back in time, and do one of them again for a week, would there be one of them that you said, I would love to do that? Just take another another lap around the track doing that.
Well, I love being teacher. I really did. But I will tell you, if you're talking about fun, the fun job was Eric Clark's job. I call it Eric's because he had it for so long.
Right.
But I also refer to it and go back to what Dale told me about being dean. This job was no discipline. I called it assistant principal in charge of fun. So I was in charge of prom and homecoming and student government and 100+ student activities. And I was all about student leadership and extracurricular activities. And still, I got to oversee 5 academic departments, and I loved that part of it. So that was a dream job for me.
Well, and that's where the seed was planted for what would be a complete career move into the world of becoming an entrepreneur and starting a business. Isn't that where you started doing freshman orientation at Carmel High School?
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about transitions, and that was part of my sociology study. I'd always been aware of how transitions in life cause change. Change causes stress, and for some people, it becomes a welcoming challenge, and for other people, it crushes them. So I, I went through an epiphany. My couple of things happened that got me here. As Eric went out the door, he said to me, "I want to know what you're least looking forward to." And I said, "Oh, no question, Eric. That's everyday cafeteria duty. I don't want to be there. The kids don't want me there. It's noisy. I'm thinking about all the stuff I've got to do. Oh, I'm dreading doing that." He said, "Here's what you need to do. You walk in that cafeteria and you look for some kid who's sitting alone, and you sit down and you talk to that kid." And he said, "Then you won't hate it anymore." So I walked in the first day and I was hating it every bit as much as I thought I would. And I saw a kid by themselves, sitting down, head down. Back there, you could win baseball caps like you're wearing.
Yep.
Pulled down her. I couldn't even tell if it was a boy or a girl. It turned out being a girl, but I sat down across from her and I tried to start a conversation. Everything was one word answers. And, you having a good day? Yeah. Got a name out of her, Katie. Which middle school did you go to? Carmel. I finally said, have you had any fun today? No. Well, surely you've seen some of your friends from middle school? No. I said, well, tell me this. How many people, this is late in the day now, last lunch group. I said, Katie, tell me some of the people you've talked to today. And she said, nobody. And I thought, here's this kid who came into a building that I love going to every day. My friends were there. I mean, I got so excited every day walking into that building, and she had talked to no one. And I said, and she's a freshman, and she's a special needs student. And I talked to her last night because she's at home and she's vulnerable. So she and her dog chatted with me on FaceTime last night. Yeah, we're still in contact. She's in her 40s now.
I was going to say, this 30 years later, and last night you talked to her.
And she was a special needs student, and I just decided, how can anybody come in this building and not talk to somebody? So I said, we got to do something about that. So that kind of started the idea of helping these kids on their first day have a fun day, and which meant we were going to have to start before the first real day of school. So we started what became known as the Greyhound Kickoff Program, and everybody came in early, and we just had a day about fun. And that kicked off the whole idea. But the second part of that epiphany was my son coming up to the high school. I knew how much he was looking. This is my oldest now.
Yeah.
I knew how much he was looking forward to coming to the high school. And then I started talking to some of his friends, and they were scared to death. And I thought, these are popular kids, but it's just the unknown. The same thing we're going through, right? It's so big. I don't know these teachers. All these junior high teachers have been saying, wait till you get to the high school. Those people won't put up with it. I'm scared to death, that I'm going to not be successful. I'm not going to find friends. I'm going to be rejected. And their parents, who I've grown up with through Little League baseball and all that, they were even more scared. And I thought, oh gosh, we got to do something about this. So I thought about it. I did a lot of research, because this is going to be one of those hints I give you. If you got to go through a transition, do a lot of research. Just the same thing Tam Tudor taught you.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of research about freshmen moving up from the middle school, junior high school, and found out they were scared to death of three things: their lockers, getting lost, and getting through lunch. So many came in that first day. They went home. Their mom said, how was your first day at high school? It was horrible. I got lost. I couldn't get my locker open, and I never did get lunch because I couldn't figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. So we had a day about fun and learning how to open your locker, where your classes were, and going through the lunch line. It was awesome.
And they had a blast. And I know that you talked about that, that went through some transitions too. You had an epiphany where you thought you'd put together an awesome day full of the adults were up there doing all this stuff, and all the popular teachers were helping you out, and they all signed on. And the reviews from the students were what?
not so good, you know. I thought, oh, dummy, I got all the popular teachers here. They don't want to hear from us. They want to
Yeah.
hear from other kids, which turned out to be so much better because rather than us taking them through it, the kids who were living it every day, who had gone through it 3 years before, they were doing it. And another side benefit was so many freshmen get lost because right away they hook up with the wrong friends.
Yeah.
And I thought, how better to do this than I get to pick their friends out of National Honor Society and all the, you know, great groups, the bands. I'm picking the best kids at Carmel High School, and I'm going to match them up 5-to-1 with freshmen to be their mentor, and let them take them through the kickoff day.
And this peer-to-peer thing is going to come back for you in a few years in a different way. So you leave you leave Carmel High School and decide you're going to start a new chapter based on this experiment at Carmel. Did you, once you modeled this new program, did you start to kind of test pilot it in other schools, and that's where you decided, you know what, this will work other places besides just Carmel?
Yes, but I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, and I had no ambition to take this anywhere. But again, my oldest son Kyle was a student at IU in their School of Business, which is pretty well known, and he was an entrepreneurial student. That was his major, entrepreneurship. And as a father, that's the last thing you want your kid to go into, because it immediately means he's never going to have a job. You know, he's not going to graduate and go work for somebody. He wants to be an
Yeah,
entrepreneur.
it's a career risk.
Oh, yeah, it is. So anyway, he's in school, and all I can talk about is this kickoff program that I'm doing at the high school. So he comes up with the idea, unbeknownst to me, to turn it into a business model for a class project. And out of all the entrepreneurial candidates, his business plan for me won a $5,000 scholarship.
Oh, wow.
That kind of got my attention, coming from the Kelley School of Business.
Yeah.
And some panel of professors has judged this. So I have no interest whatsoever. But he talks me into giving up one vacation day to go to Castle High School, where I knew the principal, and I didn't seek it out, but I was on the IHSA board of directors and sat next to this guy, and he's older and kind of my mentor. And I'm telling Cecil about what I'm doing at Carmel High School. And he said, "Lee, do you suppose you could come down and teach our kids how to do that?" I was kind of like, well, my son's been trying to get me to do that. Yeah, I'll come down. Grab Katie Overbeck, who is now Katie Griffiths, who is now Katie Overbeck. I did that backwards.
Yeah.
I knew her as a
An
student
all-star
there.
teacher. I mean, she's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And Amy Skeens, who's now Amy Skeens Benton, and the three of us went down to Castle and turned about 100 of those Castle nights into night kickoff mentors instead of Greyhound kickoff mentors. Well, that was fun. That really was fun. And again, my son is pushing me. Well, let's see where we can go with this. And then he starts throwing out at me, tell you what, I'll run the business end of it, and you just do the trainings, and we can hire teachers like Overbeck and Skeens Benton to go with you. And so he kept pushing me, and eventually, really, as a favor to him, it's nothing I really wanted to do, but I wanted to help him get set up, and it looked like a pretty good business model, and it was. So over a number of years, I went to over 350 high schools in 26 different states.
Say that number again. 350 high schools
in 26 different states.
What did you learn from that experience? I mean, that was a completely different animal than Carmel High School, where you're known, you're established, you know what the job description is, you're enjoying it. Now you're going into these buildings, many of which are nothing like Carmel High School, in far off places. I mean, you were down in the Bayou in Louisiana. I mean, you were all over the place. Maine, you were coast to coast.
I was.
What did you learn from that?
Well, why don't we turn this back to the original topic, transitions? I learned I hated transitions. It was stressful for me. I hated it. I mean, I walked out of a building where I had had a successful career for 34 years. And my routine was I'd walk in the building at an exact time. The bell would ring at a certain time. There were 5,000 people to interact with all day long.
And they were happy
First
to
day
see you.
yeah, they were,
Yeah,
we're all
yeah,
friends.
yeah.
And first day I'm retired because I took early retirement to start this job. We're kind of we'd already started it like during the summers, but now I'm going to make a full time of it. I woke up and I said, what the hell do I do with myself?
So were you
I
did you get depressed? I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely. I
when
mean,
the Carmel chapter was done.
probably clinically depressed. I mean, it was awful. I couldn't get myself going. And the way that business model is in the winter, there's nothing to do.
Right.
And I retired in the middle of the school year. So on January 3rd, when everybody went back to school, I woke up and I didn't go back to school. And it was like, oh my gosh, I don't have a training for 4 months. What am I going to do with myself?
Yeah.
I went nuts. So it took
That's
a
where
lot.
that, and Lee, that's where I am right now. I mean, I had the spring and summer completely lined up with shows,
Yeah,
and on the 13th of March, they all went away. And
right,
now I'm looking at, I have never in 30 years looked at a calendar that had nothing on it before. And
right.
I'm like, what on earth am I going to do? What? And so I'm trying to get creative and doing things like this, and reaching out and connecting with people. So that's kind of, I'm at the point where you were on that January 3rd. Well, that's about January 12th now,
Yeah.
a couple weeks into this now.
Well,
But so that's
I
why I wanted to talk to you about that. I will tell you, I got to tell you something. I went with you because at that point, I had heard that you and I had reconnected somewhere along the way, and I was intrigued by what you were doing with this training. I had been the director of a teen center in Michigan. I thought, I wonder if I could be one of their trainers, And so this is hilarious. I went with you to Kentucky.
I
And you
remember
had
where we
two,
went.
which,
Apollo, I believe.
yep, yep. So I decide I'm going to just watch you. I'm going to sit in the back of the gym, you and 150 high school students, and I'm going to take notes. And I took 35 pages of notes. I still have the notes, 35 pages of notes from your 5-hour training. And every time you do something new, I'm like, this is brilliant. This is great stuff. Oh my gosh, I love this. So at the end of the day, I am so excited. And you said, all right, now we got another one tomorrow. So the next day, my plan was, okay, I've seen it. Now I'm just going to relax and enjoy it. I've got my notes. I'm just going to follow along and just kind of watch the room. I like to watch the dynamics of the room. So you started the next day, and you're not doing anything the same way you did it the day before. And I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? He's not. This is a completely different order. Is he okay? And in the first break, I went up to you and said, what are you doing? He said, what? I said, this is nothing like yesterday. He goes, yeah, I get bored. I don't like to do it the same way. And I thought either he's crazy or he's a genius, and I'm still not sure which, actually. But
Yeah.
but it was fascinating to me to watch you in that environment, and it gave me a glimpse into what you probably were like in the classroom at Carmel, and the give and take with the students. Now you love to read a room and adapt to
Yeah, I do.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I love teaching, and the mentoring program was teaching. But, as we tracked students back in the day that you were around. We had our advanced classes and our remedial classes and our average classes. You can't teach them all the same. And
Right.
you can't even teach all of the advanced classes the same, because you're going to have different actors, different personalities. So I think part of successful teaching is reading the room and reading what they need, and working off their strengths. And if you can't engage them, you're not going to get anywhere. And I can't remember where we went that second day, but it was pretty typical for me to show up in an area and do the rich suburb one day and the inner city school the next day, and then a rural school the day after that. And like I said, even if they're both rich suburbs or both inner city schools, they're going to be different. So,
Right.
yeah, I like to think I had a big bag of tricks, and when something wasn't working, let's go in a different direction. I've done this
Well, it,
before.
it totally messed with my brain, but but it was great material. So eventually, Kyle takes over the company,
Right.
and you get ready for another transition into this thing called Champions Together.
Well,
Um,
actually, there was another transition in between that.
what was that?
Well, that's I again, I was trying to be an entrepreneur, but with the law degree and
Oh
my
yeah,
experience as a athletic director, I had experience at Carmel, unfortunately, and I'd had experiences with other school systems that had hazing incidences, bullying incidences, things like that. And so I put together a risk management package for schools, hoping to get hired by athletic directors to come in and spend a 1-day workshop or whatever they give me, half a day, to take them through risk management, whether it be risk management on an athletic field, looking for places where kids could get hurt, or all the way up to, being very observant on the bus, not putting all the adults on one bus and no adults on another bus, observing the locker room, even though it feels weird to observe a locker room. You can't just walk out and hope it's all okay. So, yeah, I had a presentation, but that didn't go real well, quite frankly, because most schools didn't want to be proactive about that until after they had a problem, and that's not being proactive. So that was not going well for me.
So you were in the position again of I need something.
Right.
And what? How did you first learn about Champions Together? And explain for people who don't know what it is, and where you were brought into the process as director.
Well, yeah, this sign behind me says it all down at the bottom. You can see the two logos there of the Indiana High School Athletic Association and Special Olympics Indiana. And the way I got involved with that is one of the things I was still taking advantage of is doing student leadership type stuff. I've literally done that my entire life. The mentoring program, but before that is student activities director. Before that is National Honor Society sponsor, student government sponsor. We go on retreats. I love that sort of stuff. So I was still marketing myself as that. And one of my clients was the NCAA. So I worked with their student advisory committee. They've got one for D1, D2, D3. And another one was the IHSA. I was working with their student advisory committee. And that was a little bit extra income as I was trying to piece something together. And it turns out that they were challenged to become servant leaders by our commissioner and our friend Bobby Cox.
Yep.
And they chose to research, and they said, you know what, we think it'd be kind of a neat partnership to go with Special Olympics. We love sports, they love sports. Every community, every school's got the students with special needs, so let's form a partnership. And my only job was to take the president and vice president over to Special Olympics to introduce them to the CEO and the vice president. Turns out the CEO is a guy that used to do a lot of officiating that I hired when I was the AD, and the vice president is a former student of mine at Carmel.
Wow.
So they call me back about 2 days later and say, we got a little grant money. Do you suppose you could spend a few hours helping us put this together? And within a year, that turned into a full-time job.
And Champions Together is this really unique partnership. And the goal is unified sports and what we call the inclusion revolution, and taking students with and without disabilities and putting them together on the same teams and letting them compete with other schools.
Yeah, well, once again, it's research based, but the U.S. Department of Education came up with the concept of we need to do something to help our kids with special needs integrated into the schools. So they put out an RFP, and one of those that bid on the project was Special Olympics North America, saying, if you give us this money, we'll come up with a program that we will study every year and see what kind of impact it's having. Well, they won that grant. That was 13 years ago. and Special Olympics Indiana has been a beneficiary of some of that money. So we, as you said, we find ways to get kids included, feel part of the building, and change the culture of buildings, and we do it through sports.
Did you think at all about Katie when you started working on
Oh,
this?
absolutely. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, Katie was a Special Olympics athlete at the time, and probably the only one I knew. I'd had no particular background in special needs, special education, Special Olympics. Didn't really understand what the purpose of the mission was when I started. My learning curve was really steep when I first came on, but I had good mentors over there too.
Well, you called me somewhere around the end of year number one, maybe, of you working on this, and you
Right?
said, I need your help, Craig, putting together an assembly. And I remember very clearly saying to you, Lee, you
That
can't,
will work.
you cannot talk to high school students for 45 minutes about Special Olympics. I
Right?
said, what are you talking about? And you said, will you help me? And so we started working on this, and this is that was the beginning of a conversation that changed my career. And we've now done 200 assemblies in high schools all over the state of Indiana, talking to students about the inclusion revolution and getting involved with students in your building and unified sports. And I have said 500 times, I was completely wrong. You were right. And the students have been incredibly receptive to this message.
Yeah.
Along the way, you and I tag teamed it, but in your training of, you know what, the students don't want to hear just from the old guys. We need to bring some people their age along with us. Into our lives came Andrew Peterson, a Special Olympic champion who's now a Special Olympic international champion, and Mitch Bonar. And Mitch is now a college student at Indiana Wesleyan University. But between those two, they did 90% of those first 200 assemblies with us,
Yeah.
one or the other.
When you, yeah, easily, close to 100%.
Yeah. Well, we've had Liam's come along here towards the
Yeah.
end, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
we've
Right.
got a
Yeah.
couple of people as Andrew and Lee have
Yeah.
gone on, or Andrew and Mitch have gone on to greater things.
Yeah. During their time period, you and I may have tried to fake a couple without
Yeah,
them, but
it's not
they
the
were
same.
the stars of the show. And like you said, now we got Liam Price, who's stepped right in,
Doing
and the
great.
tradition continues.
So one of the things that you signed up for was you would transport either Andrew or Mitch to these assemblies, which meant spending hundreds of hours in the cars with those two young men.
Right.
What have you learned from Andrew and Mitch that is applicable to this idea of transitions?
Oh, they're Special Olympics athletes are some of the most courageous people I've ever met, and it takes courage to go through transitions. And I mean, they have overcome so many obstacles. And if you've ever been around Special Olympics, which again, I'd seen it on TV and, that sort of thing, but never been really around it. And so many of these athletes, regardless of their age, they never have a bad day. Katie never really has a bad day. Um, Katie, as an example, because my wife and I have picked up on this, she lost her boyfriend and her mother in the same week.
Wow.
My heart was breaking for her. I said, Katie, I'm on the verge of tears talking about it. She said, it'll be okay. And she was right. That's kind of the attitude. It's okay. They're courageous and they go forth. And last night she's been cooped up longer than I have in her house. And, she's laughing with the dog and we're going back and forth. And so they're courageous and they do it with a smile. So that's what I've learned from them.
All right, give these folks some advice. If they're watching now and they've got butterflies, and you're talking to one of them, they could use a little advice right now. What advice would you give to those of us who are like, oh, I'm ready for this to wrap up. I want my life back. What can you tell us?
One of the things that really that helps me, and I'd want somebody like Dale Graham to say it to me, pull on your big boy panties and let's go out there and do something about it. Because here's what I think about. I think about my grandmother and grandfather on my mother's side who came to America with, a nickel in their pocket. And you talked about me being so successful at transitions, as I'd say, horse pucky. The people who are really successful are the ones who came over here, established a life for themselves. Very often, the men would come over first and have to send for their family later, and they all did that for us. But it was their transition that made that possible for us. So anything we're going through right now is just kind of horse pucky. Think about those that went before us, and then man up or woman up and be courageous and embrace it. Again, I'm going to go back to transitions. You think about some people who go off to college and they embrace it, and others who just withdraw and go home because they can't take the change. So I encourage all of you to be courageous, find new ways to do things, or get left behind. And that's what I've tried to do, and I know that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And if this one doesn't work, we'll try something else.
Well, and that's what you see these pictures behind me. Right over here is Jack Benny, who I study all these old comedians, and he went from vaudeville, and vaudeville died. And he said, I gotta figure out this radio thing, or I'm not going to be around. He went into radio and was the king of radio for 19 years. Radio went away and came television, and he was in his 50s, and he thought, TV show is a whole different ballgame. I got to memorize my lines. I got to worry, radio, you read the script, you throw it away, and you go home. And he said, I either adapt or I'm going to get left behind. And he adapted and was in television for 14 years. And his TV show wrapped up when he was 70. And he said, well, I'm going back to vaudeville. And he went back to the concert stage with his violin and worked with symphony orchestras and did this. And, but all of these people behind me have had to have, Ellen, I mean, the transitions that she's had to go through when doors have closed, and she didn't quit. She got down for a while, but she came back and is now one of the best there is working. Absolutely. So that's good advice. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they reach you?
Oh, there's all sorts of ways. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. If you can find Champions Together or Champs Together on any medium, I read them all. And if you want to just email me, it's pretty easy to remember. I'm Lee Lonzo @me.com. So like hearing from former students, like hearing from friends from the past. So feel free to email me or direct message me on Facebook, or just give me a wave on Facebook.
Well, thank you for doing the show, and beyond that, thank you for the last 10 years. You brought me with you on your journey on the kickoff program and the mentoring thing, and I became one of the trainers and have loved that chapter. And the Champions Together chapter is one of the best ever, and it's the coolest thing I've ever been a part of. And so you have been a blessing to me and a blessing to my family. And I just wanted to say that in this forum as well. So, and thank you for teaching me about Zoom. 2 weeks ago, I didn't know what this was. And now I got a talk show. Thanks, Lee.
My pleasure.
So if you all enjoyed this conversation, please share it. I hope to do many more of these. I've got a lot of friends that I've met along the way that make me smile and make me think and charge my batteries. And I'm just excited to have this forum now where I can share them on social media. So thank you, Lee. Keep smiling, my friend. And hopefully this will pass so we can get together and have lunch in person.
Well, my friend, that would be great.
And I'll buy.
Thanks for having me. Okay, I'll let you.
Thanks. Take care, everyone. Keep smiling. See you next time. All right, now you're all still watching, but I got to figure out how to stop recording. Oh, there it is. Now we're officially signing off. Toodles.